Hey everyone, it's TB Shores. It is July the 11th, 2020 at 6:07 p.m. Um, I'm trying to think of the best place to start here. Let me say up front that I have no doubt that the Lord, He is pointing the way, but He's not, how would you say, it's about us, Him giving us a little and us trusting Him for a little more, and us trusting Him for a little more, because there's a lot of things that He has shown me today that has absolutely uh, blown my mind. And it is things that I did not understand when I made this last video, even the one on the 17th, where I spoke about July the 10th on the morrow and what is it about, okay? Because I was still struggling to understand some things. And as I sought the Lord this morning, I've been extremely busy this week with personal things and family things. And the Lord knew my circumstance, but He freed me up. He freed my day up to where I was all alone for most of the day today. And He has took me on a journey and pointed things out to me and give me understanding that has made things a lot clearer. So I hope to bring all this to you and be able to explain it in a way to where it makes sense to you. Right now, as we look at how He's pointing things out, we're going to go back to the calendar once again. And of course, this is the July calendar. And we're going to look again. Now, remember how we got to July 10th. It was about the Lord giving us the counting of another Omer count, which is 7 weeks. 7 sevens is 7 weeks. But it began on May the 22nd, because that is when He had said that the new kingdom age began. And it gave us an overlap in the Omer counts, which was about us understanding that it's about a double portion. It's giving us the understanding of Elijah, how the 144, the first fruits, will walk out in the spirit of Elijah, as John the Baptist did, making the way. And the Lord is pointing to a lot of things right now that I have never seen before. I remember once, I forget just when it was, it's been a few years ago, but as I was waking, He spoke to me and He said, at a time when you think not, at a time when you think not. And I knew what He was talking about. It was about what we are expecting is going to happen at a time when we think not. And it's really been on my mind today as He's been showing me these things. But I wanted to point out first, before we get in too deep, I wanted to point out a few things. You remember how we got to this 710 date? Okay, we counted 7 weeks from 522. It was another count of the Omer. And then from there, the Lord had shown me we would count 3 months. That 3 months, He showed me I was to count it as 4 weeks per month. So that's 4 weeks times 3 months is 12 weeks. So from July the 10th, we counted 12 weeks, which took us to October 2nd, which is the first day of Sukkot. So He's starting to fill in the blanks and pointing the way and understanding what's happening throughout this little journey from these time frames He has given. But I wanted to bring back up the email that I had received that confirmed the 710 date and the 3-month time period, because that email also confirmed this 3-week time period that we're looking at right now. I just didn't realize it at the time. Now, the email that I received, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's got some things that pertains to the lady that sent it that does not need to be disclosed on here. But she had asked the Lord a question. And it was not pertaining to this, but what she heard was 3 weeks. Now, what she was asking about, I could see how it ties in to what the Lord had been, the scripture the Lord had me in, okay? And the 3 weeks at the time did not stand out to me quite like it should, but he's showing me today how much it does stand out. I had learned a bit about it. This 3-week time period that runs from July 9th to July 30th, which is the 9th of Av. All these things within this month, as we go through this 3 weeks, we're going to look at July 22nd. We're going to look at the new moon that falls on July 22nd. We're going to look at the 1st of Av. We're going to look more closely at the 9th of Av. And the things that the Lord is trying to show within this, because there's great significance in it that I think most have never thought about, and how we can find how it connects to things that the Jewish people have been following for some time. And you got to remember, they followed a lot of things. They were looking for the Messiah and missed him when he came. So it's about things that they have been aware of, but did not know the significance of it, because they didn't know the significance of Christ when he arrived. Otherwise, they would not have crucified him. But I just wanted to point out that this email also confirms the 3-week time period, because she heard 3 weeks. I may elaborate just a little bit more. I'm not sure when we get to discussing something else that I've been led. It's scripture, the Lord, he's had me in all kind of scripture for weeks, for months, teaching me stuff that I didn't know connected, and all this is bringing it together, okay? But now I also wanted to point out on July the 7th, this friend, the lady that had sent me the confirming email of the 710, the 3 months, and the 3 weeks, she sent me another email where on the 7th she had heard from the Lord. He had spoke to her. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm only going to read what pertains to the 3 weeks, okay? And it says, as my daughter Teresa says, that's me, I'm Teresa, TB, I work in patterns. The 3 weeks was a pattern that she needed to connect some dots. And very clearly, when she sent this the other day, it made me relook at this 3 weeks, because based on this, I knew that God was showing more, or wanted to show me more than what I had already realized. And it goes on to say, and to validate what was given through you. Now, what was given through her was the confirmation of the 710 date and the 3-month time period that we already talked about. And how he spoke to her in this message, saying the 3 weeks was a pattern that she needed to connect some dots. That's me. The she is me. And yes, it's about some things he is showing me, and how these are some amazing things he's connecting up. And let me look at my notebook right quick. Okay, I just wanted to bring up the email about the confirmation, because I want you to know that the Lord is confirming these things. These are not just things that I have not sought the Lord for confirmation on. I have sought him. He has given me confirmation. Actually, this lady is the third witness to the 710 date, the 3-month time period, and the 3 weeks. But what I want to talk about next, we've talked about this 710 and the significance of this 3-week time period. But I want to talk a little bit next about where the Lord was showing me. Let me back up again. where he had given me the 710. If you remember in the last video, I said that he kept telling me on the morrow, every time I asked him about the 710. And I thought I knew what on the morrow meant, that it means tomorrow or the next day. And the Lord took me to enlarge my understanding of on the morrow this morning. So I'm going to get into that right quick. What I want to point out is, wait a minute, where's my notes at? Bear with me. I got too many notes. Okay. What I want to point out is, when we look at on the morrow, there are several different, well, I shouldn't say several, there are a few different meanings of on the morrow in the word. One is H4283. We see it right here in the first verse that's pulled up. I did a search. What this is, I did a search of the phrase on the morrow. This is the first scripture that has it in it. And it simply means the morrow, the day after. Of course, that's what I originally thought. But the Lord always has a deeper meaning that you got to dig for, okay? So when I come to this, of course, I was led to go to the root word. And the root word that's used here, wait a minute, I don't know. Let me go back. I've hit something I shouldn't have. Okay, the root word that's used here, I can't pronounce it. We're just going to call it H4279, okay? It's Strong's H4279. And we're going to look at the way these words are used rather than just looking at the definition. Because in the King James Version, now remember, this is a root word that gives us on the morrow. It says tomorrow, in time to come. In time to come. In the future. Then it says tomorrow as the day following the present day. And then again we see in the future. So what the Lord was showing me here is that on the morrow does not just mean tomorrow or the next day. He was showing me that it means in time to come and in the future. So what he was actually saying when he told me on the morrow wasn't just tomorrow or the next day. He was telling me it's in time to come. It's in the future, pointing me ahead, okay, pointing me further down the calendar, so to speak, not just pointing me to tomorrow or the next day, okay? Now, I want to pop down here to the definition, and it says hereafter, time to come. So we know that it's pointing further down the road than just tomorrow or the next day. All right, the next thing I want to look up is, let me pop back over here. We need to go back one more. Is the next, I meant to mark it too, and I didn't. I'm looking for the next Strong's number that's different for the on the morrow meaning. That was H4283. I'm looking for H1242. Right here it is, okay? So we're going to look at this definition. And this is another definition of on the morrow from the Strong's Concordance, okay? Now this ties right in to so many things the Lord has shown me. This just got me really excited because if we look at the definition, it says dawn, as the break of day. Generally, morning. Okay, so that points us back to what the Lord has had me say so many times. It's about the rising of the sun. It's about the day of the Lord coming. Okay, it's about the dawn. Remember when he spoke to me, it is dawn? It's about that. It's about that dawn coming and that rising of the sun. And that rising of the sun begins with the first fruits. The rising of the S-O-N begins with the first fruits. As he enlightens them, he empowers them, he puts his light in them. Now keep in mind, it's not the full light as in transformation, but this is, he puts his light in them to a stronger degree than what is already there. And this empowerment begins that rising of the S-O-N, okay? Rising of the kingdom, okay? Where the light begins as dawn and it expands out across the earth. I know y'all have heard me say that I don't know how many times, but it goes back to what the Lord had told me several years ago when he woke me in the middle of the night in a very strong, loud, and powerful voice and said to me, the 3 days of darkness is all about the rising of the sun. Okay, yes, the 3 days of darkness is coming, but it's not coming in this 3 weeks because there's different understandings of the 3 days. Okay, the 3 days of darkness we're going to talk about right now is the 3 hours of darkness. You got to remember, God's time is very different from ours because a day may be a week, maybe a month, or a month may be a week, maybe a day, maybe a year. I mean, God is not confined to lengths of time, but it's his patterns. Okay, he keeps driving that home. It's his patterns that we must look at. And he's pointing us to understand this. He's pointing the way for us to grasp what he's trying to show. And when we look at this, when we look at this and we understand the 3 days of darkness is all about the rising of the sun, and there's more than 3 days of darkness. Okay, I've mentioned the one we're going to talk about is the 3 hours of the death, burial, and resurrection that we see at the death, burial, and resurrection as in while he was on the cross. This 3 hours, remember, there was darkness from the the 6th hour. From the 6th hour to the 9th hour, there was darkness. And I wish I had that pulled up in front of me, but we will get into that later because we're going to get into that deeper. So he's showing me about how that 3 hours, what it represents. And yes, it's viewed as a 3 days. So in this particular situation, in this pattern, okay? So I'm not going to get into explaining that. I'm just about made the mistake of getting into that. That's something we have to take on its own and separate video. But this is one of the things we're going to discuss. And I'm going to get into a little of that in the next video. So now we looked at the 710, the 3 months, the 3 weeks, how the Lord has showed us the significance of that. Okay. We looked at on the morrow, how it means something different than just tomorrow or the next day. And here in this particular H1242 Strong's number, we see it pointing us back to the dawn because it says morning, break of day. It also gets into the different mornings here. Morning as end of night, morning as in coming of daylight, morning as in coming of sunrise. Okay, of course I already covered that. Morning as beginning of day, morning of bright joy after night of distress. Okay, that's going to be one that we'll elaborate on. The sun rising, and after night of distress. Okay, and that is one of the things, some of the things that the Lord was having me to understand about this on the morrow does not just point to tomorrow or the next day. It's pointing us back to the rising of the sun, the SON, and hopefully I'll be able to show you within the next few videos what he's meaning by that. But I'm going to cut this off. This has gotten extremely long, and I will hopefully come back with the next video. I love y'all. Bye-bye.